Hello, listeners. You got Tim Soya on the line here. I'm a professional drum tech and I'm a professional drummer, and you're listening to Talking Blues.
Tim, you're currently in California in rehearsals for the next Beck tour.
Correct.
When you're doing the rehearsals, what does that entail? Because I can't even. Does this mean every day you set up the concert, or
rehearsals are a scenario where you come in and you build the instruments. In this case, I have not done Beck in about 7 years since I left Beck the last time, and a couple drummers have come in and out since then. So me and Joey Warrenker, who is the drummer on this current tour, we came in and built a whole new drum setup. So we're working on that right now. We have an initial setup. It's pretty big, and we're going to probably scale some things back. But once it's set up, then the band is just in the room practicing and playing the songs and getting their jam together.
Do you set up every single day?
No, the drums are set up. So I'm there just to facilitate Joey, and if he wants to change a cymbal or say, this is weird, let's just try this, or we go through a lot of snare drum changes, trying to figure out what snare tone we want to use, So it's mostly just hanging out and helping out.
And so they run through the whole entire show, or do they do that at this point?
Not at this point. At this point, we're in the initial rehearsals where they're just rehearsing, and then we're going to move to the production facility in, I think, about 8 days, where the stage is set up, and we'll be on risers, and the lights will be in, and we'll figure out how it's going to look and be on a stage. At this point, we're just the bands in a room jamming.
So you have no idea at this point what the tour show is going to be like?
No, I have an idea. We've seen drawings and CAD drawings of what it looks like, but we haven't. We'll get to that in about a week and a half. We'll be there amongst it,
How much time is required to rehearse that show before it goes on the road?
Once we get to the production rehearsal room or stage, I think it will be another 7 or 8 days of that. Running the show on the stage, getting the video and the lights kind of dialed in before the first show.
And is it correct to assume that the show will be complete in its running order before you go on tour? Like, is everything set and ready by the time you play your first show, or does that constantly change?
That's like a pipe dream, what you just said. Yes, of course. That's what everyone hopes to achieve. But obviously, you have artists involved and artistic directors, and everybody is this morphs it into what it's going to be, hopefully by the first show. But, obviously changes will get made as we go along.
Okay, so you're a musician. I presume you started off in the drums, but tell me about how music came into your life.
Man, you get that bug. You're a kid and you love music, and I got exposed to a drum set early, and somehow I gravitated towards it, and I don't know, it was always my interest in life was music, and I loved it. It grabbed me. Played drums through high school. I was in the marching band playing snare drum, which was cool because it made me learn how to play really fast. And I got into heavy metal music in the early 80s in the Bay Area when it was just exploding as a new thing, unheard of. And then got into punk rock, and then I got involved with some dudes that I became the drummer in their band, which was an independent punk rock band. And at that exact same time, I was working for that band and for Primus. And I say working is loose, just like helping them out, helping them unload their vans in and out of bars and stuff,
At that point, did you think you were going to be a musician, or did you think you were going to be
I was on the fence, because I love drumming, and I've never had any drum lessons, so I wasn't like pursuing a career in drumming, but I had successes with my talent as a drummer, my level. And at the same time, Primus started getting really big, and I was their little roadie kid, like there was no crew or buses. They were just a band, with a demo tape, but they started selling tickets. And I actually took a moment and said, do I go work for Primus and be a roadie, or do I be a drummer? And miraculously, at that exact moment, I had worked with this band Victims Family that I'm in. Their drummer bailed out, and I became the drummer, and I had to put Primus on hold for about 5, 6 years.
What kills me about you, not knowing you very well, but based on your resume, you have long-term relationships.
I like it that way. I don't jump around and jump ship and move on. I mean, me and Les are still like very very close friends. Like top five best friend of mine. One of them is Les Claypool. I can call him anytime I want. He'll answer the phone. And I like to work with bands and stick where I'm at and keep it real. I don't like to jump around. I know lots of roadie dudes that just jump band to band to band to band to band, and I'm not that guy.
I mean, I wonder if that's an easy thing to do. I mean, just it's crazy that you started working with the band that you actually play with now, and you were their
Yep.
drummer. But you first started off as their roadie or stagehand, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you joined the band, and you're still playing with them. You
Yep.
you get interested in being a technician with Primus at the very beginning,
Hmm.
and you're still with Primus, and that's like
Yep.
a long time.
Yeah, I mean, even with Beck, like I'm out here again. I started Beck in 1998, and I just have come and gone countless times. Not, I mean, I don't like to burn bridges, is what it really is. If I end up ending my tenure with the band because of whatever, the tour ends and they're not doing anything for 2 years, and you go work for somebody else, I always leave the door open, and I always get asked back. It's a great feeling to feel like you didn't soil yourself in a camp. You know what I mean? And it feels great to always be wanted by the people you like and the people you want to hang out with and work with.
Obviously, there was something about Primus that attracted you to work with them, and this was not about a paying gig. This was about your belief in that band and wanting to help them out.
Well, obviously for me, I mean, I've said it many times to many friends. The reason why I started working for Primus was because they were phenomenal and they were like nothing else, and they captured you. And I was working for a production not company. A girl was putting on all the little gigs in the Bay Area, not the Bay Area, more Sonoma County, and I was setting up the PA and running the stage managing, and Primus was playing one night. This is in 1998, 1988, and I'm packing up the PA, and Les Claypool is winding up his cable, his bass cable and his amp, and I was like, dude, you guys don't have a dude helping you? You're like, because I was like a fan, like they were so captivating as a band at that moment, in the beginning. Before Larry and Tim were in the band. This is the original, or not original, but the three that were in the band before those guys. And he's like, hey, man, you want to help us out? Yeah, we don't got no one helping us out, man. Give me your number. I'll call you up. And I was like, here's my number. And sure enough, like 2 days later, he called me, hey, man, it's Les from Primus, man. We're playing at the Berkeley Square. You want to come help us out? We need some help. Boom. To be able to go, I wasn't expecting money. I just was like, cool, I can get into Primus shows for free and sit right behind the band and see it that close. And that's what really captivated me as a kid, was to be that close. You know, I was more interested in helping and being right there as opposed to standing on the barricade or on the stage crushed with the crowd.
I presume learning came easy to you about the different facets of being on stage and having to help the musicians.
You just kind of become part of it, as opposed to just someone watching it. And that's, I think, what was the drug for me, was that I was part of it. And helping Victim's Family and then becoming the drummer was like amazing. But helping Primus was like, I didn't know those dudes. So I felt like, all right, I'm part of it. As an outsider, I got in. And then of course, as they snowballed down the mountain and the clubs went from like 20 people to 200 people to all of a sudden they're packing 1,000 people into the bigger clubs. It was a great feeling to be a part of it. Like you were there setting that stuff up.
Can I ask how, in your opinion, how did that happen? How did Primus become a bigger act? How did they increase the audience base from 20 to 200 to 2,000?
That's an easy answer. Les Claypool's thumb. His playing is just so eclectic, and his character is so eclectic. And the way that they structured that band was like nothing else. And for some reason, the whole audience of Bay Area, what was going on, took a right turn, and that funky, metally, whatever, that they were doing was just, that was it. Everybody gravitated to that's something new and amazing. And Les is very, very, very talented in a sense that nobody can play like him. And it just created something that was unique in a sense that they jumped out, man. It was cool.
But I wonder. I mean, you must have come across a lot of talented people who have not done as well, for
Oh,
one reason or
of
another.
course.
They just don't get to that next level.
Yep.
So what is it about them that had that? Is it simply just because they're the talented, the driven?
I mean, Les Claypool's strive to be who he is and not be told by a record company who they want him to be. Like he's very, very stiff on that level. Like when they signed to Interscope and they did that Sailing the Seas of Cheese record, it was on Les's terms, the music.
Right.
And Tom Wally, who was the A&R dude at the time, he ended up becoming the president of Interscope. He's the one that he came and saw Primus at a nightclub show at that moment, and that was when Primus was like packing 400 people like into a bar, like sweaty, like crammed as many people as you could get, and they're playing their Primus funky stuff, and the place was going ape shit. And Tom Wally came to one of those shows at the time and just said, at the end, in the back after in the little back room, said, "Dude, do you want to sign to Interscope? I will sign you right now. I see what's going on right here. And it worked. And Les said, we'll do it, but it's on my terms. I don't want a producer telling me how he thinks he can make the songs more listenable for a mass audience. Les says, we do our thing. If you want to sign it, we do our thing. And Tom Wally said, absolutely. So that's how Primus has maintained that level, of not pop and not changing their sound for the radio or whatever you want to call it.
So as they started to play to bigger audiences, from the 20 people in a small club to bigger theaters and whatever, at what point do you think this is what I'm going to be doing? This is my career path, or do you know that at that point?
Well, what happened was, I was low level working for that band and this Victims Family band that I'm in, and I had to go to Europe and be the roadie for Victims Family, touring in a van around Europe in 1989, playing squats and punk rock bars and stuff. And the drummer failed miserably. Let me rephrase that. The drummer just didn't fit, with the Victims Family guys. So by the end of the tour, I was playing the encore and doing songs that drummer couldn't do. And tour ended. Guitar player said to me, "Dude, learn the rest. Just learn the songs. You're the drummer, dude. You're the guy." Okay, cool. So then I had to come back and I worked some Primus shows. That was right when Tim Alexander and Larry Lalonde got into the band. And I was continuing to work with them and becoming the drummer in this punk rock band. And I kind of had to tell Les, as they were like RV tour now, like they had the RV. They weren't buses yet, but they were like stepping up. And he's like, "Dude, we're doing this. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Dude, I have to bow out because I'm going to be the drummer in a band as opposed to setting up your drummer stuff and your bass rig. And he didn't like that because he knew I did a good job, and my heart and soul is in Primus, but of course he patted me on the back, said, "Fucking yeah, man." And my band played with Primus many times through that era, opening up. Les always dragged us along for the fun. And then when Victims Family got to its point in 1994, where we kind of just we were done with it, like we kind of ran our course at that moment and just stopped, like quit, done, we're done. And just miraculously, within 2 weeks after that had ended, Les moved up into Sonoma County where I live, and he called me And we started hanging out again, like because we're friends, And he's like, "Hey, we're gonna make this Primus record. You want to help us out?" Yeah, oh, well, of course. You're my buddy. Of course, I'll help you out. So that's was Tales from the Punch Bowl moment, which was the after the Pork Soda record. And so I helped record that record, and then it just opened up this whole roadie thing for me, where I kind of went to the next level: buses, arenas, and like real shows with real production with Primus. And of course, as I met people along the line in that realm, I just went from there and became a roadie for bands after that beyond Primus.
Okay, so how big of an adjustment is that for you as a technician to move from bars to soft seat theaters? Like, is there any difference?
Uh, it's easier because you have more space for one,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just kind of like it's more comfortable. And then of course you get to where you have a tour bus and you're more comfortable. So and you're getting actually paid, not $20 at the end of the night and some beers. You're getting a paycheck and per diem. Like then it just unwinds from there to where you're like, wow, this is actually a job and I'm making money and I'm making more money than I've ever made working down at the record store down the street, or whatever. So it just became enticing to continue and try to push it to the next level, past that, which I did.
The fact that you said you started working for other bands once you reached a certain point, how does that happen? Is it working with different tour
So,
managers or
so my
musicians?
heart and soul is in Primus, and Les is very generous human being. Where there's a lot of friends that we have in the Bay Area have gotten where they've gotten beyond what they started out as because Les Claypool has helped. Like he's that kind of a guy where he always gets his friends involved, hoping that they can jump stepping stone into the next level where they're trying to get. Yeah, so working with Primus in Tales from the Punch Bowl and into the Brown album, a lot of guitar techs and production managers and lighting guys are coming in and out of the circle, as the tours go on. And people start recognizing your talent as a tech, whether you're a lighting guy or whether you're a bass tech or drum tech. I was a personal assistant on the tours at that point and start catching the attention of people. And one of the guys that was Larry Lalonde's guitar tech, Chris Fusel, Fussy, he quit Primus and went to work for Beck in 1998, I think. No, 97. He bailed out on Primus and went to Beck. And all of a sudden, he starts calling me, going, "Hey, dude, I know you're a drum tech. I know you're really good at it. You want to come work for Beck?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I don't know." And he's like, "I'll pay you this amount of money. Like, we can get you this kind of money." And I was like, it was 3 times what I was making on Primus. I was like, "Wait, what? I actually can make real money doing this?" And eventually, Primus kind of ran its course at the end of the Brown album before the anti-pop, and I just said, "You know what? I'm out. I need something different. This is just getting too much." Primus is kind of on a lull where I got to do something different. And I jumped ship and I went over to Beck. I didn't burn the bridge. I just said, "Les, I'm going to do something else while you guys are in this interim between this next album." I started working for Beck, and I came out as the drum tech and guitar tech for Smokey Hormel. And we did a tour of Japan and a couple other shows. And then it turned into the next tour where the band changed and I was the DJ tech and the drum tech, with Beck on the Midnight Vultures tour. And it just spirals out open from there. And all of a sudden now you're on the grand stage. You're like playing arenas, you're touring the world, playing arenas, and you meet people along the way that it just keeps unfolding. People want you because they see you do a good job.
Okay, what makes a good drum tech?
You The drummer doesn't complain. He loves you. His drums sound great. The front of house sound guy loves the way the drums sound because I'm tuning him. It just you do a good job. You get asked to do other jobs. It's like any kind of field of work. It's the same thing. You try to aspire to be good, and if you're good, you get asked to do other gigs.
Is it easy to be compatible with every drummer?
Uh I mean, every drummer is different as a person and how they are on the drum riser when they're up there in the heat of the battle. We like to call it when the artist is on stage and you're jamming rehearsals or even the show. As long as you can have a repertoire with the person as a person. I mean, I particularly do not work for people that are assholes, you know. And there's famously asshole drummers and musicians out there we all know about. If I get offered those gigs for those people that I've heard of or know of that are assholes, I won't take the gig. You know, I only work with really cool people. And as we talked earlier, I try to stay with the same people that I get along with really well, and try not to like go anywhere else. I prefer to just stay where I'm comfortable. You know,
How has the world of drum technology changed over the years?
I mean, drums are drums. They're not like a guitars have like fractals and computers are involved now and all that stuff. You know, drums are drums. You still hit them with the stick and you still tune it with the drum key. You know, Joey Warnker in the old days, we had lots of rubber pads and triggers and shit, and I'd have to run all that stuff with multiple drummers over the years. I've done that stuff. And when me and Joey started the Roger Waters gig in 2017, he put his foot down to that camp and said, "I'm not hitting rubber. I'm not hitting pads. I want to be the rock and roll drummer in Pink Floyd." You know, and it worked. You know, like all the stuff that he was the previous drummer was hitting on pads went onto tape and just in the PA. You know, where that drummer extracted those off the tape just to keep himself busy during the set. You know, so now that we've come back to Beck again, we've done lots of triggering and pads and SPDXs and stuff in Beck. And Joey said, "I don't want to do it anymore." So we have now an auxiliary dude that runs the sample sounds, and he hits pads and he does that whole thing. And Joey and me just have a drum set now again, which is awesome.
Okay, so how different is his setup from the Roger Waters tour to a Beck tour?
Joey Warrenker's setup, man. Every time we go into a new gig, whether it's a Beck tour and then now we do the Roger Waters tour, he creates something. He's notorious for like, it's got to be this now. Like, what? Let's do something different. So the drum set we have on Roger Waters is very, very unique because what we did was we got a whole new setup, and he wanted to encapsulate the Pink Floyd eras into what he was able to do. Like we do a lot of snare changes, like we have different sounds of snare drums as opposed to just playing the same drum the whole night. So what we did was he has on Roger Waters, he has a 5-piece. Well, it's two toms, two floor toms with two heads, right? And we got the stems from the Dark Side of the Moon masters he got, and when we set the drums up, we tuned them to the pitch and sound of Dark Side of the Moon, right? Like from the actual stems of the masters, the remasters.
Wow.
And then outside of those, we did concert toms with like tape and stuff on them so that they were really thuddy and rock like the wall in Animals. So he's able to play the sounds of those eras on this big ass drum kit that we have set up, you know, which is just, it's amazing that we were able to do that. It was cool. And it's effective. You know, so many people I talked to that have come to the shows say, how in the hell does it sound like the wall at what moment? And then it sounds like the jazzy Dark Side kit on other moments. And it's like, we did that. We made it correct. You know, we went the extra mile to make it correct like that. So as a drum tech, that's like the epitome of like where you strive to is you're creating for the audience as a drum tech. You're not just handing the dude his drumsticks when he walks up on the riser, you know, which I do tons of those gigs too, of course. But
Okay, so how much effort goes into something like that? And it doesn't have to be the Roger Waters tour, but on a major scale tour, you're traveling from city to city. What is your day like?
well, I mean, obviously, once you get your setup done and it's part of the tour, you just set it up and tear it down every day. You know, it's not that big of a deal. That's the easy part. Getting to the point of say show number 5 and you're comfortable and the drummer's comfortable, then you nothing changes. You know, you just
But
set
I
it up.
mean, in the example that you cited about the Roger Waters tour, you're tuning more than one snare drum. I don't know how many snare drums you used, but the fact that you're doing that, and I don't know, I presume you have to tune before every gig.
Yeah, I mean it's more a touch up tuning kind of thing. You know, like drums don't go out of tune
Right.
like terribly unless you're, beating the hell out of him. Joey doesn't hit very hard. He's got the Muller technique where he snaps at stuff. I mean, he gets rocking, of course, and drums can't handle it. The drum heads and the rims can't handle it, and you make sure everything's cool. I don't change heads very often with Joey because he doesn't really wreck them, and they sound great. And we did the whole Us and Them tour. I don't think I changed more than 3 or 4 heads the whole tour.
And that was a long
For
tour,
a
right?
year and a half. Yeah, it was a year and 7 months.
Okay, tell me about that. Like, obviously, you're not out there the whole year and 7 months, but you're probably out there 4 to 6 weeks, maybe more at a time.
No, well, Roger Waters is like longer legs because he's older and there's a lot of days off. So we're out there for a lot of days off, but a lot of shows. I mean, we're doing shows, and seriously, pull the kid out of the cases in the next show, and you set them up and you hit them, and they sound great. It's like you don't have to do anything.
Okay, but okay, so we've all seen concert footage where they show the time lapse footage of the stage being set up and the PA systems
Yeah.
going up and whatever. What's your typical day like?
It's incredibly easy with no electronics. It's incredibly easy. I mean, with Joey Warnker and we have our setup, it takes me a half hour to set it up, and then I go to catering and get some food and some coffee or whatever. Yeah.
And then just as much time to take it down?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just easy. It's super easy, man. I mean, it's literally like you set up a drum set or you take it down. How long does it take you? It's not any different because it's on a grand stage.
Right.
It's just a drum set.
Okay, and then during the performance, you're obviously sitting right behind the drummer in case anything
Uh,
happens.
it depends on the gig. In the Roger Waters gig, I'm under the stage and I have a video screen. I can watch Joey. I only go up there and hand him a snare drum a couple times each set. And at the level of where I'm at as a drum tech, I make sure there's nothing's going to go wrong and there's no electronics involved. So he plays. The cymbals don't fall down. The tom doesn't spin out of the way. I make sure that stuff is not going to happen. So I'm under the stage, just hanging out.
Okay, so for a drummer who's never had a lesson but who's played professionally in a, I would presume,
Mhm.
punk band, is that correct to say?
That's
Yeah,
correct. Yep.
okay.
Alternative Tentacles recording artist. Ah.
So what's the difference between you and Joey or you and Tommy Aldridge?
The difference between me is I've never had a drum tech.
Well, you're the drum tech.
Uh, yeah.
But
So
as a player, what do you see when you see them play versus the way you play?
yeah. Well, you got to understand. Every drummer's different. Every gig that you do as a drum tech is different. Because you have to adapt to that drummer. I've worked with Joey since 1998, and I know how I handle him and how I can make it and what I have to pay attention to during the show. When I got the Tommy Aldridge gig, it was the biggest honor of my lifetime because obviously I was into the early Ozzy records and those early Ozzy tours when he was in the band. And it was just like, I'm not a big Whitesnake fan. I mean, I got that call, and it just that it was Tommy Aldridge. I took it. I mean, he could have been playing for One Direction, and I would have taken it. Just to say I worked for Tommy Aldridge. And as it turned out, me and Tommy are good friends now, and it's just an honor to even know that dude. But it's a whole different animal. He plays different. He hits really hard. I made sure cymbals didn't fall. There was no problems because of my not taking the steps to make it tight as hell because he's a monster up there, with big giant sticks, and he's beating the hell out of it and doing the hand solo. So you have to pay attention a little closer, just in case, like he would look at you sometimes and it's like, dude, what's wrong? And he's like, I need more water. Not that, but it was never like, dude, the fucking drums are falling apart. It was never that. It was but you got to pay attention more with a guy like Tommy Aldridge because he's hitting harder.
How does that call happen? Are you working for Tommy or are you working for Whitesnake?
I got hired by Whitesnake to be Tommy Aldridge's drum tech. Tommy Aldridge doesn't hire a tech. He reviewed a few people that were available. I got the call through a friend, kind of vibe, like in the tech world. Like, like if say I had to leave Beck, it's like I would call a bunch of roadie friends right now if I needed to get someone to replace me on Beck. I know drum techs all around the world, and obviously most of them are working. But you go, hey man, what are you doing? Oh, dude, I'm busy on Fleetwood Mac right now. I got a guy who was working for the Eagles, and the Eagles aren't touring this year. He might be able to do it. It works like that.
Okay, so how does that connection happen? Is it just from the years of touring that you get to
Years and
know?
years of touring and meeting drummers and opening bands, and you're opening for the Eagles, and you meet the higher level dudes, and they see you do a good job. They take your name down and your number in case they might need you for something, or that scenario of handing off a gig.
As you were coming up the ranks, was there any drum tech that you modeled yourself after, or that you watched and thought, man, that's what I want to be one day? Does it work like that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you're working for say Primus, and Primus is opening for the Rolling Stones or something, like or when I got in Sheryl Crow, we did lots of that where we were opening for big bands and doing big shows where we were the opening act, like on stadiums and stuff. And you meet these drum techs that do that, and then you quickly find they're just dudes like me that just set up the drums. It's like there's not some like they're not like Elon Musk that runs Tesla or something. It's like they're just a drum tech. Like, and then you become friends. You hang out, you go have dinner, you have beers, or you hang out and yuck it up and crack jokes all day because you're bored all day, and you become friends with these peoples, and it just becomes like an incestuous, like a networking thing, where the drum techs all stick together and the guitar techs all kind of have their Rolodex of numbers of dudes when they need somebody or somebody needs somebody. It works like that.
Now, is there like a personality trait that's associated to different types of techs?
Uh,
Like our drum techs tend to be a certain type personality. Our guitar techs
well,
different.
I mean, we all know guitar noobs are dorks, so we don't really associate with them if we don't have to. No, I mean, it's everybody's on a crew. You're all hanging out. And if you can get along with your dude, that's the artist, the drummer, or whatever, and everybody else, I mean, that's the key. You're in a confined situation for months at a time. You know, you have to get along with everybody. If you don't, it's toxic, and someone's going to get kicked out. So you just find your space, and of course, I've been around a lot of super professional drum techs of the highest level, meaning like work for U2 or whatever, or the Rolling Stones, and you realize that you're just a dude setting up a drum set, and there was never any striving to be like a drum tech. It's striving to be as good as, wow, that dude has been the drum tech for the Rolling Stones for 26 years. That's cool. He's obviously doing something right. So you watch that dude work and you see him interact with Charlie Watts, and you go, that's who I want to be, not how he sets up the drums. How you interact with the drummer is between you and the drummer. As long as the drummer's happy, you're in.
And what's that relationship like? I mean, obviously, in your case, for most part, you've had long relationships with the drummers that you've worked with. But in the case of Tommy, who I presume you didn't know before you started working for
Right.
him, how does that?
That was a very unique situation for me because I was such a fan, and I knew what I was getting into. Like, I saw the picture of what his current drum set was before I got the gig, and there is a very faint moment of like, oh shit, what did I get myself into? This is some serious stuff. But then when I get out there and I meet Tommy and I see the kit, and drum tech hands it off to me and says, this is kind of fucked up here, and this rack is weird, I never had time to fix it. Then all of a sudden you click into drum tech mode where it's a challenge, and you go, man, I'm going to make this better, and I'm going to make Tommy happy. And we just got along like phenomenally. It was awesome. And he loved that I made everything as best as I could every day. And not that the dude before me did a bad job. He just was also the stage manager. He confessed to me that I just didn't have time to get to this stuff. But man, if you could fix this and fix that, Tommy would be stoked. And I did. And Tommy was stoked. And so then me and Tommy are just out there having a great time. And every night was flawless. Like he never had a problem with me and how well I did it as a drum tech.
But is there like obviously there has to be a bond between you and the drummer?
Yeah.
Is there something that how do you ensure that? And when you come into a new gig, how do you ensure that there is that connection and an, I guess ongoing?
Well, I mean, it's obvious. Like any job, you have to prove yourself that you are capable of it being good. That Tommy Aldridge, obviously not ever seen the kit before. I set it up and we did the first couple gigs, and he just was like, "Fuck yeah, bro, killer, no problem. Is everything cool? Yep." Then you're like, "All right, I did a good job. I'm on the right track here."
And the
It's
tuning?
like, see, tuning, yeah, totally same thing. The dude before him was funny. Kind of laid it out to me that you got to change the tom heads every 4 shows, snare head every 2 shows, and I was just like, man, 2 shows in, the snare starts sounding great. And so I kind of went to Tommy, in the first week. I said, hey, Brian told me that you like to change the head every 2 shows, no matter what. He goes, man, I always hated that, man. It's like 8 shows, 9 shows, change the head. He's like, then it starts to sound shitty. He's like, man, don't touch it till it's ready. I'm like, that's my vibe as a drummer, because I'm a drummer. I don't know if Brian's a drummer, the dude before me. That's what I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. I'm just saying he just did his thing. And if you're not a drummer and you just do the routine, sometimes it's not what the drummer wants. You just do it just to be sure the drum head doesn't break, whatever. I know the drum head's not going to break. As hard as Tommy hit, by show 4, the snare was just rocking and ripping. You don't mess with it.
How do you know that the drum head's not going to break? Is it just wear and tear?
Jedi mind tricks, knowledge. I don't know, man. When I used to do Victim's Family, and we're like aggressively weird punk rock band and avant-garde, but I beat the shit out of the snare drum, and I would play a Remo Emperor on my snare drum, and I would write the cities on the tour as we were going along, and after the ninth city, the snare drum just gets to that sweet spot of like just wow, and it's like, okay, it's gonna break tomorrow. If I play this one more night, it's gonna break. And I kid you not, I tested it to the 10th show 3 times in a row, and it broke on the 10th show every single time. And then it'd go to the other snare drum I had sitting there. And so I would know at show number 9, change it. There was like, change it. So I mean, there's stuff like that. And then with Tommy Aldridge, it's like, Joey Warnker, I don't change snare heads. It really, he doesn't hit hard enough. And like Charlie Watts has had his kick drum head on for 28 years, and his snare drum head had been on for 15 years. The time I was around those guys. I was like, man, that's insane. And so me and Joey, if it doesn't sound bad, why would you change it?
Right.
Just cause. Let's put a new head on. I mean, I did Tim Alexander and Primus for years, and he wanted a new head every day, like 12 drums. You have to change the heads every day because he wanted that feel of the brand new head. I like that feel. It's just like, come on, man, really? Drum heads don't sound good when you first put them on. To me, it takes a day or two or a show or two of playing to really get them in there. And the Tommy Aldridge snare drum was unique. It was the Paul Lime Yamaha signature model. I don't know if you know about that. That dude. I was not hip, and it was a chrome over brass, 5.5, whatever it was, and it just was this screaming, ripping drum. And Tommy just like was so stoked when he confided with me that, dude, leave it on for a week, man. God damn. Right when it was sounding good, last dude would change it, and I have to, God damn it. That's that brand new head sound again. I like it when it's 6 shows in and it really, you get it to that point and you keep fiddling with it every morning before the sound check, and bam, just gets to that sweet spot. It's like,
Now,
that's my jam on the head. So
is it correct to assume that the snare is the most vulnerable because it's used probably more than anything else?
totally,
So do you ever
for
have to
sure.
change the floor tom or?
It depends on the drummer, and with Joey Warnker, like I say, we barely ever changed heads ever, but we have the main 2-headed tom setup was 13, 14, 16, no, 13, 14, 14 floor, 16 floor. and the 14-inch floor tom for some reason took the most abuse, and that's the head I've changed maybe a, about a dozen times, and some of the toms and snares I've never changed the head since we started. You know,
Okay, so how different is one brand of drums from another? Like, what is it? Is there a big difference between a Gretsch versus a Ludwig or Yamaha? Like, is to you, is there any much of a difference?
they all sound different. They all have their character. They all have their durability, like with hardware and parts and stuff that's on them. It's something you note as a drum tech across the brands. Uh, it's all the same stuff. I mean, it's just pieces of metal screwed to a piece of wood with a piece of plastic tightened down on top of it, and you hit it with a stick. I mean, that's it. That's what it is. Whether you made it or Steve down the street made it or Joe over down in the next city made it, it's the basic same concept, you know. And with drums, there's no electronics, so all, all these guitar noobs with their pedals and their amps and their tubes and their solid states, like we don't have that really involved. It's all about the organicness of plies of wood and what it sounds like when you hit it with a stick with a piece of plastic stretched over it. So I don't really have a preference to a brand or these drums are better than those drums. Like right now on Beck, we're using a 1979 Gretsch kit that Joey found on Reverb and bought it. And it's 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18 two-headed toms. And it's like, it's an animal. And I mean, you're a drummer, right?
I used to play drums very poorly many,
But
many
you
years
understand,
ago.
okay, so you understand drums, but you understand like a DW kit versus a Gretsch 79 kit, or say a Ludwig
Why? I
64.
don't think I would even understand that there is that
Oh,
difference.
okay.
So,
Okay, so I mean, it's like a guitar player having 12 guitars and two different amps. Like, and me and Joey kind of worked that with snare drums. We tuned snares different for different songs that were recorded. Because Beck specifically, his albums don't sound the same one album to the next. So we've had to stylize drum sounds, snare drum sounds, to make sure that the song at least has that going on with it.
I just never knew that took place. That you actually changed the snare for
Yeah,
the different sound.
yeah. Yeah, Steve Jordan is the king of that. Steve Jordan will have a different snare drum for every song in a set.
Wow.
Yeah, he's crazy like that. I've seen it go down.
On a
I've worked for
regular
him for a
kit though, like a Tommy Aldridge kit, do you have spare parts or spare drums for every drum?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's basic knowledge as a drum tech that you have a backup kick drum pedal, a backup snare drum sitting right there, because those are the key elements that if the kick drum pedal breaks for manufacturer, spring broke or the pedal plate broke, not because of something I did, you got to be able to swap it out really quick so that the song can continue and the set can continue. But cymbals break now and again. Tommy, I had a cymbal bag sitting there. I think maybe only one time a cymbal broke mid set and I had to put another one up.
So at the level that you're at, the Roger Waters, the Whitesnakes, the huge bands that you work with,
Mm-hmm.
is there a big difference between one tour and the other? Like I can imagine Roger Waters is ridiculous because of all that goes into setting up and the video screen and all that. But as a drum tech, is there a difference between going out on the road with Roger Waters or Whitesnake or Beck?
No, it it's basically my world and my whole focus is the riser. And so to try to differentiate those tours is, do we have a trailer behind the bus? Do we have a bus? Is there catering? Are we getting it's like, what hotels are we staying at? Are we staying at the Comfort Inn or are we staying at the Marriott? And so I mean, it's just a job where that's your focus, and then everything else is just what you have to deal with. Obviously with Primus, it was always a one crew bus and one band bus and one truck full of stuff. And you go to Roger Waters and it's 29 semis and 85 people on the crew, and you're just kind of cruising along with it. And I just still, all I have to do is go in and set up the drums and do the drums. So Tommy Aldridge, same thing. okay, we're in a theater, and you go in, and the drum riser, I set up the drums, and that's it. Where's cater? You know?
What's the favorite part of what you do? What is the favorite thing of what you do?
My favorite thing is actually uh, people appreciating how good the drums sound and how the artist loves how I've helped him and made him comfortable. You know, like the appreciation level that you get from everybody around you is what I like the best. You know?
And you've been doing this for a number of years. Was there a moment where you thought, I don't know if this is the right word, but that you've made it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously when I got to the Primus level after touring in Vans punk rock style and getting on an actual tour bus is when I thought, okay, I have actually got to the next level. You know, obviously I'm not playing the drums, I'm setting them up, but I was making, you know, 5 times the money from being in a punk rock band and working shitty jobs in between the little shitty tours we were doing. I mean, yeah, of course. You know, you hit that level. And by the time I got to Sheryl Crow was when it was really the next level. Like this is like it's on, man. I we made it, or like I made it. You know, we're like on the Grand Arena. You know,
But how do you ensure that? I mean, that's all based on tours, right? You get hired for this tour from this date to this date, unless they renew or whatever.
yeah. I mean, like we've talked about. You know, I tried to stick around. You know, and I worked for Sheryl Crow for 13 years straight, where that was pretty much my only gig, other than moonlighting some stuff, filling stuff when she had downtime. You know, but I never wanted to leave Cheryl. I never had, and it was never a, I'll just do this tour and go on to the next. You know, like it was a great little group of people that we made the Cheryl Crow show happen. And whether it was opening for the Rolling Stones or doing a corporate show in some ballroom or just doing her tours, playing in theaters or arenas, we all tried to stick together as our core crew. And you know, that's really the coolest thing about it when you have a core crew coming back out here to Beck now in 2023, like I started in 1998 with Beck. That's a long time to keep getting asked back, you know. And we were all in the room yesterday. It's the band that was the band that's was the Odelay band, which is 1996, 1995 ish.
Wow.
And Beck wanted to kind of get the old guys back together and redo it again. And we're all in the room, and a bunch of the techs were around in the same era as a Beck, and it's just like just a jokey, funny, cracking up jokes, and everyone's laughing and playing stops because we're all telling stories at times, and you know it really feels great as a family member, you know, and that's what I aspire to be in every crew I work with is to try to keep it real and not I'm just here to fucking get paid. You know?
I presume not every band is like that. I mean, I kind of know of some bands where there's isolation that the main person might
Yeah,
not even hang out with the band members or
yeah.
the crew.
I mean, I won't name names, but there's artists you work for sometimes where you don't ever see them. You know, you never talk to them, but you're out there for a month and you've never met the artist, like the principal artist, or you know, the band guy is just like they treat you like you're just some employee and make my stuff good. And I those kind of situations I've only been in as a fill-in or took the gig and immediately got right back out because I don't like that kind of a scenario. You know, but it's out there big time. You know, Roger Waters is very unique in that there's 85 people on the crew: video, lasers, lights, sound, backline, production, wardrobe. I mean, it's
Yeah.
huge. But Roger, at this point in his life, he's phenomenally personable to everybody on the whole entire tour. Like he knows everybody's name, even the little sound dudes and the lighting dudes that are just there for screwing on light fixtures. He knows their name and he'll say hi to them when he sees them. You know, which is awesome. That's why I'm very happy to be out on Roger Waters. You know,
But you would know by reputation who's good and who isn't.
oh, of course, because I know all the people in the industry and I know all the techs and I know people that work for all those bands. That's how I know these kind of things go on. You know, it's for real. You know? And so I avoid those scenarios for sure.
I know you have a family.
Mhm.
How difficult it is to say I'm going to go on the road for the next 2 months or 3 months.
Well, I mean, my wife, I met her in 1993 working a show. She was worked for Bill Graham Presents at the time,
Oh.
and I was doing it was a WOMAD tour, Peter Gabriel, in San Francisco, and we had mutual friends. We kind of hooked up and, and got together. We've been together ever since. So she ended up actually being a tour manager for Beck on the Midnight Vultures tour because she had done some tours. So that's kind of we're from the cut from the same scene, and we understood that this is what it is, and we were together, but we made it happen. And eventually we got married, and then when we started having kids, she just stopped touring completely. But you know, I make great money touring, enough to handle the bulk of our family income needs. Is me having to go on the road, and our kids have grown up, but that's what Dad does. It's just that's just what it is. I don't go to the office and sit in the cubicle and sit on the computer selling insurance 8 to 10 hours a day. I go on the road. I'm gone for 6 weeks.
Now I know that's your life and you're used to it, but is it as simple as that, or does it become easier as time goes by, or is it difficult to say I'm going to be
Uh,
away from my family for 6 weeks?
it really has become that's just what it is. I mean, that's my career. That's the path that came in front of me, and I went for it. It's gotten easier now because our kids are, able to handle themselves without us, changing their diapers. I mean, they're 18 and 21, so they run our business at home. And my wife now is able to come out and hang out for a week on tour with me, which is it's never been like that. So it's actually gotten down to like a really cool spot where we're really happy. And my wife's not so stressed out having to do everything. Our kids take care of stuff, and they take care of themselves, more than anything. So it's been a long road, but we're there now.
Which is
you know,
pretty amazing. I mean, at what point did you think this is my career path? This is what I'm going to do? I guess it was with Primus, but
yeah.
there's no guarantees that that would continue. And here you are, many many
Yeah,
years
I mean,
later.
the carrot at the end of the stick of get to the next big gig, get the next big gig, and the pay scale rises, and the pay scale, and then pay scale rises, and you get to the Cheryl Crow level, and it was just like this is incredible. I was on payroll for 7 years with Cheryl, like even when we were home for a month at a time, the checks were still going into the bank, because she wanted to maintain the exact same people everywhere she went around the world. And that's the pinnacle moment where you get like that with the band, where you are an employee of the band full time all year round.
So when you watched and you've worked with so many different bands and many many successful bands, is there a component to what makes some bands more successful than others? Like, do you see a certain business practice or dedication from where you sit that says, "Oh, this is the reason why Cheryl Crow's so good. This is the reason why Whitesnake is so big."
Nah, I mean, it's basically if you can say you want to get paid X amount of money to do your job out there and they pay it, then you just go out and do a good job. Obviously, when you go work for say Primus right now, if I go and help out with one of Les's bands or something, and they're playing for 1,200 people, you get paid. Okay, that's cool. They take care of you, and you go work. Say, I get a call to go to say Green Day and fill in for a week, and it's like then you go do that, and it's like it really is about money in the end, just like any job. A lot of people think this is some grand and glorious spectacular thing that's like no other job in the world. It's just work, man, and your goal is to make as much money as you can to pay your bills at the end of the day. And like I say, the people that you work for is what's most important. If they're assholes, I don't want to do it. You don't want to go work for some company and the boss is a total tyrant dickhead, and you're stuck there because you're making good money and you can't find another job. You know what I mean?
For
Sometimes it's
sure.
like that. It's same as in rock and roll. So it's basically this just the same as anything. You just really find good peoples and you try to stick with it. Stick with them.
What's the thing about your life as a technician that most people would have no idea about?
How boring it is out here.
Because you have so much downtime.
Correct.
And how do you
Boredom
deal with that?
boredom is part of the job. Sitting around and waiting for stuff to happen. You just hang out with the crew. I mean, it's a bizarre situation of like being a professional boredom expert. I don't know, man.
I have to ask about the pandemic because I can't imagine that would have been an easy time for you. But although I do know that you
Yeah.
have a coffee shop business,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
which I presume you attended to more. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that got us through the pandemic. I mean, obviously, the music industry shut down for almost 2 years. Like their concerts weren't allowed. Not just you couldn't find work, there was no work. So
right,
that was a very interesting situation in my 30 plus years of being in this business. And some of my friends crumbled and went on to other stuff, or they didn't return to the music industry because they had to find something else, and then were happier where they were. And me and my wife and our kids, we had our coffee shop, which closed for 7 months, obviously. And when it reopened, all four of us, we took on that coffee shop, and we were the employees. We did it for a year, over a year, just us. Nobody outside employee coming in, and it got us through. And the business has tripled since, like we really built a really cool uh, rebirth of the coffee shop, and the city that we live in love it, and we get a lot of customers, and it's been really great. And now our girls run it. Like me and my wife don't have to actually be there, other than me fixing the stuff that breaks. And I mean, she goes in for sure. I mean, it's her business. We're all baristas. All three girls bake, and I mean, it's like it really got us through. And once the music industry started happening again, I was just waiting for Roger Waters, basically. Like I was kind of happy to not go on tour anymore, and I wasn't chomping at the bit to get back out there. And ironically, for the first time in my entire career of being a drum tech, I got a call to do a gig, which was a bigger gig to do Counting Crows, which the drummer is an old buddy of mine. I did him with Sheryl Crow over the years. And he's like, dude, we're going. We're going to do 2 months. Let's do this. And I'm like, man, it was the first time that I put my family in front of me going out and get money, because our coffee shop needed me there. Me going on the road meant we would have to pay for employees, and the pay difference of that towards what I would get on the road. And then the stress of like, we still weren't at that point of like the coffee shop is happening. And I turned it down. It was the first time I ever said, you know what, Jim, I can't do it, man. I literally cannot do it for the fact that my family is more important. And he's like, got it. Totally get it. No problem. So it was interesting how being off the road played a big part during the pandemic in my future decision making, as being a drum tech. Whereas normally you just take whatever the fuck comes your way and you take it because you got offered it.
and I presume at your level, people are calling you on a regular basis.
Totally. All the time. Correct. Yeah.
That must be a good feeling.
It feels great. I mean, it's great to be able to help people when they call you and you're able to squeeze it in. I mean, that happens a lot where it just, well, dude, what are you doing in January? Like, oh, I'm not doing anything until February. Oh, well, can you go to Japan for 2 weeks and then do 2 shows in Australia with this band? Oh, I could totally fit that in. And then the pay is great. You're like, you go do it. These days, I don't take so much of that stuff. I'm trying to get to the point when Roger Waters ends. I'm not into that level of touring. It's really a wear out for me. All the days off and that level of 85 people on the touring crew. It's just I'm too old to be around that situation. Like I like kind of doing hey, go out here for 2 weeks and take care of this dude, or hey, this band only works about 3 months out of the year. Do you want that gig? Yeah, I'll take that gig. Let's do that.
How far in advance do you know about your future?
I don't. I have no idea what's going on past December of this year. I know Roger Waters will end mid-December, and next year I have zero, zip. It's a wall. I have no idea what's going on past that.
Does that worry you, or is that totally comforting to you? I mean, you probably know that there are going to be other offers.
Yeah, you always look at it with a panic mode is there in the back of your head, like shit, I don't have anything next year. Me and Joey are just doing Beck for this run. Roger's going to end. He's going to retire, but he might do more. Well, I mean, I work at home. I got the coffee shop. I don't get paid for that because I own it, but I work. I can build shit and paint the contractor buddy, or I have stuff I do. I get paid. I'm not worried about like the door shuts and I have zero income. It's just the phone's gonna ring. Come January, the phone starts ringing, man, because everyone's setting up for the year of touring. The calls are going to come in, and then you just got to weigh out: am I doing well enough to stay at home this year, or until
Hmm.
certain point, wait for another call that's more enticing. You don't, you never take the first call. You know that.
With all that you've done, I wonder, does it work like this, that there are artists out there that you would love to work with?
I mean, I'm pretty satiated in what I've done. Like you saw my resume,
Yeah.
I'm very happy with all the accomplishments I've been and all the famous drummers I've helped and been a part of their career. Like I'm a facet of it. I'm pretty satiated. Obviously, the Tommy Aldridge thing was just a trophy on the shelf. Like that I got that call, even as late in his career as it is, it still was epic to me. And like I think I'm happy now. I've captured enough big ass drummers that I worshipped as a kid, as a tech, and that one was just like the one, man. I mean, Tommy was such a great dude. And
That's how I felt when I interviewed him.
yeah, I mean, Neil Peart would have been one. You would just go, man, if I had gotten that call, or God, I can't think of any other drummer that I really would have been like amazed if I got the call.
But I guess it's about the drummer, not the band for you, right?
Yeah, but I mean, whether you like Whitesnake or not, you know what they were and then became and then are now, and it's like, but that didn't matter to me. To sit 2 feet from Tommy Aldridge every single night for a year and a half and watch that dude play, it's like you pinch yourself. I'm actually the dude that Tommy's looking at me going, throw me the towel. You're just like, I can't fucking believe this is happening right now. It's happening. And like, I'll be sitting around like with all my crew buddies out here even. And, it's like, we'll be having a beer or something. And it's like phone dings. And it's like, you go like this and you show everybody the phone. It's all Tommy Aldridge just texted me. And they're like, you're an asshole, man. That's just insane, dude. I can't believe that. It's just like, those are the kind of things that, you're just like, I made it. I did it. I'm there. Tommy
For
Aldridge
sure.
is texting me. It's so funny. It's so dumb and just roadie stuff, but it's really cool, man. I think I've made it. I think I've done it all, man. That's why I feel like if I don't do this anymore and I just kind of take care of Joey or go out and do a week here with some other band, I'm fine with that, man. I really would just be with my wife and hang out at home is awesome, man.
Well, I would presume spending that time during the pandemic at home probably.
Right. That time I was home off the road for over a year, like maybe a year. I think the first thing I did was a Primus live stream they did at Les's wine tasting room. I think it had been a year and maybe 6 months since I'd done any rock and roll. And since 1989, that's the longest I had been home in one stint since then. Over 30, almost 35 years that I had been home for more than 3 months
Wow.
ever. So me and my wife and kids were together for a year and a half, like every single day. They live with us. We were together and we did our cafe. And anything that happened, we were all together, and it was like a unique experience. And it changes your frame of thought. Like I say, a lot of roadies got out of being roadies because they were home for a year and had to find something else and didn't go back.
Yeah.
But I'm really good at being a roadie, so I went and did the roadie stuff again. And obviously we were waiting on the Roger Waters thing, and Joey's my dog. Of course I'm going out with Joey Warner. It was just great. If you ever seen that dude play, you'll understand. The guy's a phenomenal drummer.
It must be
Incredible.
amazing to witness that from where you sit.
Hmm. Totally. And in the Beck gig, it's just we have this gigantic kit, and he just plays all around the whole thing all night long, or all songs long, and a whole band and all of us just sit there and just laugh because he's so great, man. I can't even explain it. You have to be there to see it and see Joey Warner. I mean, I don't know if you or know about him as a drummer, but man, incredible.
Tim, I know you got to go for rehearsals. Real pleasure talking to you. As I said, I thank Tommy Aldridge for making this happen. And
awesome, man. I was honored that he texted me and asked me if I'd be into doing this with you. And of course, man, roadies don't get interviewed very often or get to tell their story of what it's about as a human being on the road, you know?
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, cool, man. Well, like I say, you ever want to talk to me again, I'm always open, man. It's super awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.